Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering Trump calling the border bill a death wish, says don't be stupid. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. Coming from the Hill, Trump calls border bill a death wish for Republican Party and says don't be stupid. Coming from Wokeness on Twitter, this might be the most insane part of the border bill. This bill grants the far-left D.C. District Court exclusive authority over future immigration disputes. So you can't just file a lawsuit in Texas or wherever you're having issues if you're a state. You can't file it in just any federal court and then deal with that local appeals court. You've got to go through Washington, D.C., which is full of leftists, and yeah, that's a serious problem. It means the end of trying to dispute anything with regards to immigration. Also from the Hill, GOP rep absolutely shocked that garbage border bill is being considered. Trump is also warning the border bill is very bad for Lankford's career. Langford is the Republican in the Senate who's been pushing this bill. Lindsey Graham warns the Senate border bill deal will die without amendments. So if they don't make changes, it's not going to get through. From the Hill, Trump calls border bill a death wish for the Republican Party and says don't be stupid. President Trump excoriated a bipartisan border security bill put forward by senators, calling it a death wish for the GOP on Monday, hours after it was released. Quote, only a fool or a radical left Democrat would vote for this horrendous border bill, which only gives shutdown authority after 5,000 encounters a day, when we already have the right to close the border now, which must be done. Trump wrote this on Truth Social of the legislation, which was crafted in part by conservative Senator James Langford. Quote, this bill is a great gift to the Democrats and a death wish for the Republican Party. It takes the horrible job the Democrats have done on immigration and the border, absolves them, and puts it all squarely on the shoulders of Republicans. Trump continues, don't be stupid. We need a separate border and immigration bill. It should not be tied to foreign aid in any way, shape, or form. Trump's opposition further complicates the path forward for the legislation, which has already been facing pushback from Republicans in the House. The legislation unveiled Sunday night included $20 billion for border security. It would give the federal government temporary authority to expel illegal aliens when the average number of daily crossings exceeds a set threshold, end catch and release, raise standards for asylum screenings, and seek to process claims quicker, among other provisions. It really is an amnesty bill. The bill also includes national security funding in the form of $60 billion for Ukraine, $14.1 billion for Israel, and aid for Indo-Pacific allies like Taiwan. Republicans had insisted that any aid for Ukraine be paired with legislation to address the southern border, but Trump's post Monday indicated any Ukraine funding may be a non-starter. House Speaker Mike Johnson slammed the border deal Sunday, writing that it is even worse than we expected and declaring it dead on arrival in the House. Democrats have for weeks argued Trump has pushed back against the prospect of any compromise on the border because the former president believes it would be a political win for President Biden. Trump has repeatedly hammered Biden over the flow of migrants at the southern border, and polling has shown voters trust Trump more on immigration and the border. Also from the Hill, Trump says border bill very bad for Lankford's career. President Trump on Monday rallied against the bipartisan border agreement and took aim at Senator James Langford, a key negotiator for his role in brokering the deal. In an interview on the Dan Bongino show, Trump denied endorsing Langford's candidacy in 2022, despite supposedly doing so publicly, and did not rule out endorsing a primary opponent when Langford is up for re-election in 2028. Quote, I think this is a very bad bill for his career, especially in Oklahoma, Trump said about Langford when asked whether he would back a primary challenge to the senator. Quote, I won in Oklahoma, Trump said. I know those people. They're great people. They're not going to be happy about this. Nobody's going to be happy about this, but the people in Oklahoma are. These are serious MAGA. These are serious people. They are not going to be happy about this, Dan, when they see this. This is crazy. This is lunacy, this bill. Senate negotiators unveiled the 370-page national security legislation Sunday evening after months of negotiations. The bill includes funding for Ukraine, Israel, and other foreign policy priorities, as well as significant changes aimed at tightening enforcement at the U.S.-Mexican border. Ahead of the bill's text release, Trump had attacked the prospect of the legislation, branding it as a political victory for Democrats ahead of the 2024 election, a message he repeated in Monday's interview. Langford has fiercely defended the bill and said that if Trump returned to the White House, it would give him the tools to manage the border. He also lamented Speaker Mike Johnson's rush to disavow the legislation before even having a chance to read it. In the meantime, they didn't allow Mike Johnson to read it. They wouldn't allow the House to be involved in the discussions while they were working on this bill. They just want to dump the bill on the House and try to force them to help pass it. Well, the key aspect of this, again, is are we as Republicans going to have press conferences and complain the border's bad and then intentionally leave it open after the worst month in American history in December? Langford said in a Monday interview on Fox and Friends. Quote, now we've got to actually determine, are we going to just complain about things? Are we going to actually change as many things as we can if we have the shot, he added. I've had some Republicans say, well, this will make Joe Biden whole on immigration. I don't think anyone is going to see Joe Biden as the border security president. I just don't think there's any chance of that, because what we've seen in the last 3 years is an open border like our country's never experienced. So I don't think when we pass this bill, everybody's going to suddenly think he's the savior of the closed border, Lankford told reporters last week. If you've been following these things, you know that the Democrats pretty much are all on the same page. The Republicans are not, because some of them are MAGA populists and some of them are establishment that may as well just be Democrats. McConnell is one of these guys that seems like he's basically a Democrat or he's in business with the Democrats. Coming from the Hill, McConnell faces career-defining test in Trump battle over Ukraine and the border. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell will face one of the toughest challenges of his career this week when he tries to muster Senate Republicans to vote for a Ukraine funding and border security package that former President Trump wants to kill. McConnell's initial goal, according to Senate GOP colleagues, was to get a border security deal that would have the support of at least half of his conference, which numbers 49 members. It now appears the defense supplemental spending bill, which includes the border security provisions as well as funding for Ukraine, Israel, and Indo-Pacific security, will get less Republican support than that. Aides are predicting between 12 and 20 Senate GOP votes for the bill, and that the vote total will shift as lawmakers digest the text of the legislation, which was finally made public Sunday evening. The stakes are high for the 81-year-old Senate Republican leader, as he will come under significant pressure from Senator Ted Cruz and other conservative critics to abandon the bill if it doesn't look like it will get much more than 10 GOP votes. But if the legislation gets between 18 and 25 Senate Republican votes, that will put heavy pressure on Speaker Mike Johnson to take the bill up in the House, despite his earlier declaration it would likely be dead on arrival in the lower chamber. McConnell declined to say last week whether he would favor moving ahead with a bill that had support from only a minority of his conference, and acknowledged he doesn't know exactly how the debate will play out. Quote, it certainly has been a challenge, he admitted when asked if it was a mistake to link Ukraine aid to border security reform. Quote, but it's time for us to move something, hopefully including a border agreement. But we need to get help to Israel and to Ukraine quickly. Senate Republicans say McConnell has employed a soft glove approach to persuading his Republican colleagues to support the bill, regularly reminding them of the national security threats facing the country and also of the fact that Trump pleaded with Congress to reform the nation's asylum laws when he was president in 2018. Of course, this is not what Trump wanted. He didn't want to just give the country away like they're trying to do with this bill. Quote, it's really about reading the room and persuading where you can and listening where you can. He's very good at all of that. His voice isn't as loud as it used to be. I think that's by his choice. I also think it's also reflective of the situation we're in right now. There are some people that feel strongly about the different sides of this issue, said Senator Kevin Cramer. McConnell is under withering criticism from his antagonists within the Republican conference who are jumping on the issue to take shots at his leadership. Cruz is leading the pressure campaign not to allow the bipartisan border security deal to reach the Senate floor, arguing it will put the new speaker in a terrible position and give cover to vulnerable Senate Democrats up for re-election. Quote, as a result of this foolhardy bill, Senate Democrats are out now beating their chests that the problem would now be solved if only Republicans would back it, Cruz told The Hill. He says it's the latest example of Senate GOP leaders negotiating bad deals behind closed doors in smoke-filled rooms and trying to ram them down the throat of the GOP conference. And he says Senate Republicans who support the border security deal are behaving like the political arm of Chuck Schumer's team, referring to the Senate Democrat leader. But McConnell's allies say his critics within the Senate GOP conference are usually the same group of people: Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, Ron Johnson, and Rick Scott. Quote, we kind of hear the same things from the same guys day after day and week after week, complained one GOP senator who supports McConnell's efforts to get the emergency defense spending bill through both chambers. McConnell is relying heavily on his top deputy, Senate Republican Whip John Thune, to explain the details of the legislation to skeptical members of his conference and also to manage their expectations given stiff opposition from Trump and many House conservatives. Quote, my goal is to try and let the conference come to a collective decision about how they want to proceed and deal with this, said Thune, who has urged GOP colleagues to keep their powder dry on blasting away at the legislation until they have a chance to read it. But Thune warned that if the deal gains only weak support from the conference, McConnell may decide to pivot to a Ukraine funding bill without border security reforms. Quote, if we don't have a strong vote coming out of here, if we don't have a lot of Republicans behind it, then we'll probably end up having to pivot, he said. GOP senators say McConnell has taken a while to recover from the concussion and fractured rib he suffered after falling at a March 2023 dinner at the Waldorf Astoria in Washington, D.C. Several lawmakers said he doesn't speak as much at conference meetings as he used to, but will interject at key moments to nudge the internal debate in one direction or another. McConnell has reminded fellow GOP senators in recent weeks not to get too enmeshed into partisan skirmishing over President Biden's border policies and to remember about the serious national security threats posed by Russia, China, and Iran. He says the United States now faces the most serious international situation it has since the Berlin Wall fell in 1989. Kramer said the debate over the Ukraine border security package is a harder one than most, but despite the staunch differences among Republican senators, he thinks McConnell is focused on the party's best political interests as well as achieving the best policy outcome. Several Republican senators say winning back the Senate majority in the 2024 election will be more important to McConnell's future as leader than whether he can get money for Ukraine passed through the Senate this year. Quote, I don't think he would take a momentary victory over a longer-term governing majority, Kramer said. This will certainly be the easiest time in recent history and going forward to regain the majority. And if we don't, it's going to be very, very hard to get it back for a long time. He's pragmatic that way. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.